you need references, especially if you want to capture the look of a 2D character in 3D. The goal is not to make a 2D model in 3D, the goal is to make a 3D model look 2D. So we need to grab the references, the guides for how it's supposed to look once it looks 2D from external, so whether it's like a character that already exists or it's a character that you've designed yourself, so that you can then base your 3D model or let those references guide the 3D modeling process. So this is, for example, a kind of default setup that I use. So imagine this character's gone, right? It's not here yet. What I would always recommend is to have references of the character that are kind of like them just kind of standing in a neutral position from the front and from the side view in your 3D scene. Like this one is a really good one. This one is like a really good reference for creating your 3D model because it shows you the full character in all the proportions. Ideally, of course, without clothes, but if they always have the same clothes on, then I guess it's fine. Find references of them standing straight like this in a neutral pose. The face, I guess, is fine like this. It should probably be neutral, but whatever. Usually you don't find perfect references that have everything you would want. But what you're looking for is, first of all, neutral, them standing full body shots from the front and from the side. And then, if you can, also a 3/4 shot. So this one, for example, we could place right here, kind of as if the character is already in the 3D environment as this reference. So if I go into front view, orthographic view, if I take the red line as the ground, I want to kind of place it like right standing on the ground like this. Usually I go with the heel as the ground point because oftentimes 2D characters are kind of modeled with feet slightly slanted downwards. And in these cases, I usually use the heel as the ground position and the front feet, I guess, they're just kind of below the ground, which doesn't really matter that much. In 3D modeling, you could adjust it afterwards anyway. But this is kind of like a good example of like a really good reference for 3D modeling. Then you would, if you can, also like to find one that is the same but from the side view. In this case, for example, for Luffy, I couldn't find one that is like this. And unfortunately, I couldn't really find good references to, I guess you could call it like Photoshop one together. That's something that I also had to do sometimes, and probably so you have to do sometimes too. It's just like you find a lot of references and they have like some good things, like, oh, maybe it's like a shot of a manga panel or like an anime panel of him standing straight, but you only see the top part, which is something that you see here with these references. Like here, this one looks pretty good, right? This one, but it doesn't have a lower body, so I had to combine it with this one to add the half of the lower body to the legs. And so this way, of course, ideally his legs would be straight, but in this case it's not. You could Photoshop this to be straight, and just as a tip, if you don't have Photoshop, and I wouldn't recommend getting Photoshop because Adobe just sucks, what you can do instead is use a website called Photopea. I'm gonna have a link of to that in my course page, I guess you can see and check out. It's kind of like Photoshop, but just the web version on free. Or, why even use Photoshop anymore? Especially for this is more than enough to just kind of like combine these, for example, and create like a perfect reference for your example. Next to this main 3D setup of references, I also would recommend to have a second one for which you're going to use a different program, which is called PureRef. It's basically kind of just like a pinboard where you can just throw all your references in and then sort them and give them labels and whatever. Here is where you would have the references that don't really fit into the category that I want you to put into the 3D scene. Different perspectives, different emotions, anything that you find useful for modeling the character, animating the character, anything like that. Let me show you what that could look like, for example, for my One Piece project. So what you want to do first is collect all the references, and then you can just grab them all and dump them in here. The first thing that I would recommend you to do is just grab all the references. I think you can just do this, or Control A to select them all, and then you go to here, right click, and then images, normalize, and then I would usually use size so that they're all kind of roughly the same size. And then once they're all kind of the same size, you can go in here and go to images, arrange, and then optimal. And that just kind of gives you a basic layout of all your references. If you then, for example, want to say, hey, like I have Luffy with black hair and I have Luffy with the white hair, let me just bring all the white hair images over here. And then I can sort them like this. And this is kind of what this program is meant for, to kind of keep all your references in check. And you can also place this program on top of anything else. So if you, for example, have a browser where brain rot memes or whatever is playing, you can then say, hey, right click, and then where was it here? Yes, mode, always on top. This makes sure that even if there's something above this, let's say, for example, I have Blender underneath this. If I now click into Blender and do things, you can see it still stays on top, which is like really, really useful for references, because even if you like, you know, need to change your brain rot content, okay, on YouTube, and you have placed this on top of the browser, it'll still stay on top, and you don't have to then click it again to make it be on top, which is really, really useful. Something that I would also recommend, if you really want to make something as good as possible, I guess you could call it, what I want you to create is a face angle grid that you would create from different shots. Like, oh, you have a manga panel where he looks front, and then you have a manga panel where he looks to the side, and then you have like this, and like this, and like this. Then you can collect all of these and arrange them in a grid like this, which can be very useful once you have a base 3D model head, and then rotate around to see, you know, to just kind of see if all the angles look correct. And then the last thing that I want to give you as a tip for pure ref, if you go right click and then note, Control N, you can then also write something like white hair, and use this, for example, for a header like this to, you know, just organize it a little bit more. That's kind of like what PureRef is really good at, just organizing all your references so that you can quickly like, oh, okay, let me look at these. Okay, I have this, and then, what about, I don't know, his body? Oh, that's what it looks like. It is also, I think, you can either get it for free, or it's kind of like pay as much as you want, so you can kind of choose what you pay, I guess. I would recommend to pay something, because it's a really good program, and, you know, if nobody pays, then it doesn't, I don't think it sticks around. So if you want to learn more about 3D anime, make sure to check out my free 3D anime course here on YouTube. In there, I basically try to condense all the information that I have gathered over the last 2.5 years of creating my projects and learning things and researching things and testing things, basically. And I've tried to put it all into this one course for free, which you can see and find on YouTube. So if you're curious about that and want to learn more and go more in depth in creating your own 3D anime, for example, make sure to check out the description where you'll find the link to it. Otherwise, I guess you can also just enjoy more of these clips if you want. So yeah, do whatever you want.